bonjour à vous, membres de Baseball Québec. Je veux simplement vous dire que Houston est un fier partenaire des manches supplémentaires qui va donner un coup de pouce à tous les bénévoles pour partir l'année 2021 en feu.
Alors, bonsoir tout le monde et bienvenue aux manches supplémentaires. Je m'appelle André, je suis de Baseball Canada. Ça me fait plaisir d'être avec vous encore ce soir pour une autre belle aventure. Et évidemment, on part en voyage beaucoup cette semaine et on va continuer notre voyage aujourd'hui. Et si vous regardez ma carte derrière moi, encore une fois, on est ici, on traverse encore une fois l'océan. On s'en va au pays des Vikings. Et qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? On va parler à un collègue suédois de hockey Suède. Et vous savez, au Québec, on a quand même un attachement particulier avec le hockey suédois. Si vous êtes de ma génération, dans les années 80, on se rappelle de Mats Naslund qui a joué pour les Canadiens de Montréal. Si vous êtes de la région de Québec, par exemple, vous vous rappelez peut-être lorsqu'on avait les Nordiques, on avait Peter Forsberg, on avait Mats Sundin qui ont fait vibrer les partisans du Colisée de Québec pendant quelques années, avant le déménagement, évidemment. Et à travers le temps, évidemment, on voit beaucoup, on se rappelle, on a en tête le super chandail bleu pétant avec les trois couronnes dorées sur le chandail de l'équipe suédoise, que ce soit lors des Jeux olympiques, que ce soit lors des championnats du monde, ou même dans le temps des fêtes où on aime vraiment regarder le championnat du monde junior à la télé, ou la Suède, à travers les années, se sont évidemment toujours distingués avec de bonnes performances. Et aujourd'hui, on va aller voir pourquoi on a eu justement ces bonnes performances-là. Aujourd'hui, notre invité, c'est Anders Wahlström. Anders est le directeur du développement à Hockey Suède. Anders et moi, on s'est rencontrés il y a quand même quelques années lors d'événements de hockey, lors d'événements de Sport for Life, donc de sport pour la vie. Et rapidement, on a bien connecté parce qu'on s'est rendu compte très, très vite qu'on avait des atomes crochus, qu'on avait des façons similaires de voir le développement du sport, que ce soit le hockey, que ce soit le baseball. Je pense que vous allez apprendre beaucoup aujourd'hui. Puis la question justement qu'on avait comme thème, c'est comment le hockey suédois peut-il influencer nos décisions comme intervenants sportifs en baseball pour le développement du baseball, que ce soit au niveau québécois, que ce soit à votre niveau local également. Donc, quels seraient justement ces principes fondamentaux qui viendraient vous aider, qui viendraient aider les intervenants à prendre de meilleures décisions puis peut-être avoir une meilleure expérience dans le sport en général. Vous allez comprendre que la conférence d'aujourd'hui, la conversation d'aujourd'hui ne sera pas en suédois, mais va être en anglais, mais ne sera pas en français non plus. On va le faire en anglais, évidemment. C'est deux langues sur lesquelles Anders et moi, on peut converser. Ne comprend pas le français, je ne comprends pas le suédois, donc on se rejoint justement en anglais. Alors, sans plus tarder, je vais lui souhaiter la bienvenue. Anders, switching to English right now so you can understand. Welcome and thank you for being with us tonight. So in my introduction, I talked about our links as a nation here in Canada with Hockey Sweden, with the Mats Naslund, Mats Sundin, Peter Forsberg that we had the chance to watch play, whether you were in Montreal or Quebec City in hockey, and also mention your successes as a nation, whether it's at the Junior World Championship, Olympic Games, and all those events that we see on TV all the time, and also all your great players that are playing in the NHL here. So welcome. So I quickly introduce yourself. I quickly introduce how we met and how we became friends and how we got connected early because we were sharing kind of the same philosophy regarding sport development. So I'll turn it over to you a little bit. If you can explain a little bit your pathway, what you've done, and how you ended up at Hockey Sweden.
Yeah, thank you for having me for the first, Andre. It's going to be a fun hour ahead of us. If we start from the early beginning, I mean, I'm born and raised in the same city as Peter Forsberg, up north in Sweden. A huge hockey culture city. Marcus Naslund, Peter Forsberg, the Sedin brothers, Victor Hedman. There are so many great players from this city with 60,000 inhabitants. Small city with great hockey culture. So that's where I got hockey right in my veins. So that was a big interest from start. So I played myself up till the junior level, that I didn't develop the way I wished. So I didn't get to be an elite player. But instead of that career, I started to educate myself as a sports scientist at the university up north in Sweden as well. And after that, when I got my first job, it was within a sports club. And then I worked within one of our sport districts. And then for like almost 20 years ago, I started to work with the Swedish Sport Confederation as a manager for children and youth sport. And in that role, I met all our 72 different sports federations in Sweden and tried to support them when it comes to develop actually their everyday practice when it comes down to club development, coach education, but also, which I think is the most important part of it all when it comes to being an association or a federation, to work with these structural changes when it comes to game formats, when it comes to strategies for club development, strategies for coach education, so that we can make it a little bit easier for our people out there to do the right things. I mean, it all comes down to how they behave in everyday practice to contribute to this environment that we want to see out there. So after I've been there for almost 14 years, I think, or 15 years, I got a phone call from the Swedish Ice Hockey Association, and they asked me if I wanted to try to do what I have been telling all the other federations to do for so many years. And here we are. I'm trying to do that, trying to make an even better children and youth hockey environment in the Swedish hockey context.
And knowing hockey is so important for both Sweden and for us in Canada here, it's difficult to say no to an offer like that, right? To work for hockey.
I just couldn't say no.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've been here for almost 3 years now, so I'm still here at least.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. So that gives people perspective about where you come from and where you are right now. So let's dive into it right now. So and I'm sure you would agree with me that any great organization always have guiding principles with regards to sport development, how they're gonna like plan and influence and build programs. So my first questions to you, Anders, is in your shoes right now as a sport development director at Hockey Sweden, what are the guiding principles that kind of drive everything that you are doing with hockey in Sweden?
Mm-hmm. I will just soon share my screen for you guys, but before that, I mean, it's one of the hardest things in my position right now is that, as you said earlier, Andre, as well, I mean, Sweden, we are a successful hockey nation when it comes to draft picks in the NHL, when it comes to championship medals and everything. No doubt about that. I mean, we had an all-time high when it came to the NHL draft picks this last draft. So we're doing great things, but the reason that we are where we are today is because of that we did great things back in the years. I mean, we're right now aiming to keep this position in the global hockey world. We would like to be even a better nation in the future. Therefore, we need to do things today that will help us stay in this position, not tomorrow, but in the future years to come. So just to be brave enough to work with big development questions when you're successful, I think that's the hardest part, to get the understanding both within the Swedish hockey context, but also when we talk to other federations and other nations. But hey, why do you need to change? I mean, you're that successful. I mean, but everyone around us are moving forward, so we also need to do that. So with that as a background, I will share my screen. There we have it.
it's working. We're good.
Yeah. There were. Yeah. So what we did just a couple of years ago is that we launched a new development model. In Sweden, we talk a lot about the importance of home field advantage. You win more games at home than you do on the away ground, so to speak. So we try to use that metaphor, and we just call this model the home field model, just to send the signals to all our clubs that you need to take care of your own club's environment and create an environment for your players to develop in. So that's the metaphor behind it. And we have built this on both, of course, the most evidence-based research we can find, but also our experience, of course. I will come back to that in a while. And we put up these pictures to try to explain for the people that we want to join us, just to make it a little bit more understandable. So what we would like to see in all our 350 clubs in Sweden with children and youth hockey on the program is that we make sure that every player, no matter of his or her skill level at the moment, or his or her ambition at the moment, or his or her socioeconomical background, gender background, and all of this, we will make sure that they get the opportunity to develop when it comes to those four themes that you can find in the four circles: hockey skills, hockey sense, physical skills, and psychosocial skills. And we talk a lot about that all of those parameters are active in every action on the ice. I mean, you need to, if you're just going to take a shot at goal, you need to have the skill to do it, so you can aim. You need to have the sense to do it at the right time. You need to have the physics to have the right power, enough power in the shot, and you need to be brave enough to take the shot when it's timing for it. So all those components are in every action. So we can't isolate those from each other that much. So that's what we're aiming for, the player-centered approach. And then it's important that the coaches, the club boards, and the parents understand that they are a big part of creating this environment for the players. How they behave, how they work in everyday practice is crucial for the players' experience and the players' possibility to develop. And then we put the role models up there as well, mostly because we need to be better from our perspective to use them to send the right signals to our club members and to our young players that for sure NHL is big goal for a lot of people, but there aren't that many who make it. So that's what we're trying to aim for, to make sure that every player, no matter of background or skill level, get the opportunity to learn these essential things that you need to have to become a good hockey player. The overall intention with this is to make it easy for all the people involved in Swedish ice hockey to do the right things. So that's why I said it's so important that we work from the federation's perspective with structural changes. It's all from when it comes to not having standings or results, when it standings at least, and individual statistics up to 12 year of age, just not to send signals and trying to get parents and coaches not to behave in an inappropriate way. We know that if we have individual stats, for example, at the young ages, we know that the the dad to goalie sits in the, is a guy who are taking stands, and his son had too many shots when you look at the paper compared to what they had in the real game. And it can be, as I said, about game formats, coaching education, and all of that. So a lot of structural changes need to be done to make it easier for people to do the right things. So that's the overall intention. When it comes to your question then, Andre, you asked about the guiding principles. And here they are in Swedish. We made a decision quite early in the process not to come up with a complex, hard to understand development model. Instead, we choose to go with 4 quite simple guiding principles that we would like to have all our aiming groups to have for their eyes in the daily work when they make decisions and when they work with our players. So I will go through these 4 one at a time. Just in a moment. These principles, they are going to affect our structures. So our development model is not only about player development, it also affects our coach education program, our club development program, our game formats, and our recruitment strategies. And these are the 4 big development programs, development projects that we are working on right now. And hopefully most of them will be checked out as done when it comes to the summer 2021. And then we have a few other development projects that we are planning up right now then. But back to the principles. The first principle is that we know that we need to have a person-centered approach. I mean, you can't underestimate the role of the coach and role of the grown-ups in the environment. We know that a good coach, he or she have a big impact on the players' motivation, the players' interest to play hockey. So we talk a lot about with our clubs that we need to make sure that the players, they themselves, they want to be in the environment of hockey. They get a chance to be there, and they can be there when it comes to economical barriers, when it comes to skill barriers and all of that. So how the coaches act and how they behave to include everyone is crucial in this. So we'll work a lot about in our new coaching education with transformational coaching and transformational leadership to get that kind of behaviors at place for them. And I mean, one of the keys to success is that you need to genuinely take interest in every individual, not only those who are the best of the moment. We need to understand that everyone can develop an interest, and that's going to benefit us any day in the future. So that's the first principle, person-centered approach. The second one, I have talked a little bit about this one already, but we call it that you need to give everyone the chance to develop. And we need to make everyone to understand that a few of our players become elite players. Most do not. But hopefully, even though if they don't get elite players, they will love hockey, they will play hockey, they will put their kids in hockey. But they will only do that if they leave hockey with a good experience. And we know that everyone can get a lifelong interest in hockey if we just do our work together with the clubs and the coaches. We talk a lot about the importance of fun. We work together with Amanda Visick at George Washington University in the US, who helps us with a Swedish ice hockey study on fun maps. We right now are out there asking 2,000 Swedish hockey players, boys and girls between 9 and 19 years of age, to rank all our 82 fun factors from 1 to 5 to see which are the most important ones. And what we think we can come up with is a tool for our clubs to actually ask the kids on how they experience their everyday practice. And that way we get a great feedback tool for our coaches as well. And I think that this principle is probably the hardest one when we talk to our coaches, and especially when it comes to not be trapped when it's come to this, what we at least call the core logic in sports. I mean, it's about winning. It's about doing results. And if you aren't aware of that structure affects you all the time, you will pick the boys and girls who have the best skills at the moment, the highest ambition at the moment, and you will classify them as talents, and you won't care about the others. We need to get our coaches to understand that both ambition and skills aren't steady factors. They develop over time, and with the right kind of environment, with the right kind of leadership, the right type of coaching, we can affect both ambition and skill if we can affect the motivation, because you need to be motivated to stay in sports. We know in Sweden we have most of the players start when they're 5 years of age. We have an average age on our highest men's league on 27 years of age. I saw that we have an average age on our last Olympic team at almost 30 years of age. I mean, it's a lot of years that you will stay in hockey. So if you aren't motivated and the motivation comes from within yourself, it doesn't help much what we do. So we need to understand that. But it's hard because we have coaches who really are caught up in winning the trophy for the 12-year-old team. But that's not what it's all about. So we work a lot under this second principle, we work a lot with our coaches on these two. They need to understand that development of players isn't linear. That's an important one, but it's hard for them because if you pick the ones who are born early in the year, if they have played hockey for a long time, and if they are early matured, you probably get a talent. But it doesn't say anything about the future. And then we work a lot with them, and that's a structural question that we need to do selections. We need to wait to do selections as long as possible. We talk to our elite clubs that we would like to see them wait until the boys and girls are 15 before you pick them from other clubs and other teams. It's hard. Everyone agrees theoretically on that, but it's hard in the practical real world out there. The clubs need to understand that they are part of the same ecosystem. If they start stealing, if I use some kind of hard word, players from other clubs at young ages, those clubs aren't going to be there in the future, so they won't have anyone to play against. So we need to understand that we are in the same ecosystem. Well, that's a hard one. But this is the second principle. We need to give everyone the chance to develop. Third one, and the principle that is mostly concrete out there, is that we are trying to work with appropriate settings, both in practice and in games. I mean, we need to understand out that the children aren't mini adults. It's so easy to be trapped in that when you look at the elite level sports or the adult level sports and you just copy paste it. But if we can agree on that children aren't mini adults, I mean, we can do so many good things to set up a good development environment for them. So we work a lot with the game formats, which I will come back to in a little while. And of course, we work in practice as well. here is the clue, at least that's my experience, to really make sure that the coaches understand that they are young boys and girls that they work with who are on a education and development journey, and they shall not peak until they are at least over 20 years of age. So what we are trying to do right now is that we in 7 of our 22 districts, when it comes to game formats, we have we try to play like this from the year of 8 years and below. We play at 1/6 of a full rink, European size, 3-on-3. The U10 and U11, we play on 1/4 of the ice, 3-on-3, and at U12 we play on 1/3 of the ice, also 3-on-3. And we have decided to try to play 3-on-3 all the way up to U12 when they are 11 years old. Because we see when we have done all the measurements and we look into all the data we have on this, we see clearly that if as soon as you put in a 4th player and he or she doesn't have the same skill level, she get isolated and have almost no actions at all. But when the same player play 3-on-3, they will have quite a lot of actions. And actions are essential for having a chance to develop. Because if you play a game and you never touch the puck, it won't be fun. So you probably quit.
I'll ask you a quick question here on this slide, Anders, if you don't mind. So we've seen lots of sports trying to adapt with game format, and that's pretty awesome what you have done there. But I'm looking at your slide right now, and you have like 2 games being played at the same time, if I'm correct. What's the purpose of the center of the ice there? So why is the center of the ice not being occupied? Is there a reason for that?
Okay. 2 reasons. In these drawings, they aren't occupied. But when we have games going on and we have the benches there, the players who aren't playing are there. But we also see, and we tried it in some of our pilot districts, that they have obstacle courses out there. So while the players are resting, they are actually running these obstacle courses and skating a lot more. So what we're aiming for actually is high activity. And that takes me down to how we work with our rules and regulations when it comes to this game formats. And we took the big rule book, which I believe have like 250 plus something rules. And right now we have 7. And these are the subtitles of those. So for example, when one team scores, the game manager or the referee, when it comes up to U12, he just puts out a new puck behind the net and they start playing immediately. So we really try to have a high intense game with not that many stops. But right now we're in this process of starting to play. Unfortunately, we have this Corona situation, so we aren't playing as much as we would like. But hopefully we play enough so that we can evaluate both how the game format when it comes to surface size works and the rules and regulations as well. And hopefully we can have this as national game formats from next season already. So that was the 3rd principle. The 4th principle is that we really need to reach out to our clubs to make sure that we can provide the players with fundamental moment skills. One way to do that is, of course, with multi-sport participation. But we also need them to understand that it's not all about the organized practice. I believe that we put too much trust in what we do in an organized way. And we can see teams in Sweden and clubs in Sweden who are offering the boys 4 practices a week from quite young ages, so they don't have any time for free play, any time for spontaneous sports. So I think we just overestimate the purpose of the organized play. I mean, if that's all they do, it won't be enough anyway. So I think what we try to tell our coaches is make sure that every practice is so fun and inspiring and motivated, so the kids, when they come home, they will try on their own and do more. That's important. And we also talk a lot about the importance of variation in social environments to try to figure out who you actually are. So that's why we also like to see them do multi-sports. Why not in different clubs and different environments? So these are the four principles.
That's very good. Like if I can take a couple of seconds just for my takeaways here. So here's a nation that has had lots of successes. So I'm talking to the Quebec people here, lots of successes, but they said, okay, if we want to continue, and they base their successes on what happened in the past. So if we want to go forward and maintain that edge or that success at the international level, we need to look probably differently at what we are doing now if we want to have an impact later on. So it brings me to the concept of, you know, when you climb a mountain, let's say we go to see Mount Everest, you don't stay long. Nobody can stay long at the top. You need to come down a little bit and learn from what you're experienced before you go back up. So that's kind of the same type of experience that concept that Anders just mentioned here. The second thing, if you have noticed, we haven't talked about passing, shooting, goaltending, power play. We haven't talked about hockey since we've had that discussion. We've talked about guiding principles. So it's a person, and that really like that, it's a person-centered approach. We didn't say a player-centered approach. We talk about a person-centered approach. So going back to our baseball principles, so we would not have discussion about hitting, about base running, about catching, about pitching, about winning, about first and third, bunt defense, and so on and so forth, is what's good for the person right now so they can have success later on in life, or in hockey, in the case of our discussion right now, or in baseball, in our case also. So that those are kind of my takeaways. And if you remember the beginning also, we talked about the role of, and we'll get back to this later on, but the role of parents, the role of parents, the role of coaches, it is crucial in this implementation, and also clubs. And I even noticed referees were part of the process as well, which is really, really important. So Anders, you mentioned at the beginning that, you know, you based your principles on research and science and everything. So I'm curious to know, like, who were your main influencers as far as building your key principles? I know, like, we as sport people, we like to look outside, be curious, and come up with ideas, or steal ideas, modify ideas from others, and make it our own. So for you as an organization, who helped you shape those principles, and who got some influence? You mentioned Amanda Weissek earlier, which is fantastic, talking about fun, but was there any other organization or people that help you?
Yeah, I will stop sharing my screen now so we get back to this. As you said, we looked around the world and tried to steal what seemed to be working out there. So we have done a lot of traveling. I mean, met with you at the Canadian Sport for Life conference a couple of years ago. We visited USA Hockey for a couple of years ago. We've been visiting the Dutch Football Federation. We've been in dialogue with Australian Rugby. So we tried to look around and see what different nations, different sports had done. And we had so much material, so we could like dive in it. But then we talked a lot to Jean Coté, especially. I would say had helped us out a lot. PG Wahlstrom in Sweden as well, who had done research on what are the characteristics of really good development environments, and from that we, as I said earlier, we realized that we aren't really helped with a complex model. And so we took a decision that based on who we think are the hockey coach in Sweden, who aren't that often an academically educated coach. He or she is often a parent who works as a plumber or any job like that, and played hockey themselves up to the age of 20, but didn't really make it. And they look a lot. They have all the channels who shows ice hockey, and the big influencers are those expert commentators on the TV screen. So for them, we said, hey, let's cook this down to 4 guiding principles that we really think they and their clubs can have for their eyes all the time, so they don't have to go back and look into some course material, education material, but they need to live with these 4. And I think 4 is a good number. If they can't keep 4 principles in their head at the same time, we probably doesn't want them to be coaches.
And I like how you simplified everything throughout the course of your presentation. You mentioned those 4 core key principles. You mentioned the rule book that got simplified also, because at the end of the day, and we're living the same thing in Canada in my sport, baseball, at the end of the day, our coaches, our volunteers, our moms and dads with another profession, another job. So if we keep things complicated, obviously it makes things a little bit more difficult. You mentioned something earlier about implementation, about resistance. Obviously, that's always a case when something new is being implemented. How did you communicated or integrated parents as far as how you're going to implement your new principles? Like, were the parents educated about those principles? So how did you deal with the parents that are important also in the whole structure?
Yeah, that's a continuously ongoing work. I mean, it would be so much easier if we have a constant group of people to work with, but both parents and coaches stay for a few years, and then we have new ones coming in. So we need to be out there to communicate and educate both parents and coaches on this all the time. As I said, the most concrete difference that they experience is the game formats. So for a concrete example, right now we 2 weeks ago sent out this communication toolkit to all the clubs that are involved in these 7 pilot districts with folders to their parents where they can read a little bit more about our game formats. We gave out these coffee cups with a QR code so they could scan and they get to our site with the game formats. We got some stickers for the kids that says "Final Real Hockey." So I think it's really a lot about communication, and I think communication. We need to look at communication as education as well, because it's hard to get the parents to give up a weekend to come to an education. But we also have some research from Karlstad University in Sweden who have educated parents in different ways, and they can see a big difference from those who did it close to practice and games, where you had the parents at place already, and those who invited the parents to kind of conference complex during the weekends. So our strategy right now is to get to the parents, reach out to the parents with communication and education, in the same facilities that the kids are practicing and playing games, and at the same time. And we have trustfully given this task to the clubs to do that, and we try to help them with education. What do you call it? Materials, so to speak.
I really like the coffee cup idea. Like, nice. You know, you go to any ice hockey arena and you see those parents coming with a coffee, right? So I think it's a fantastic idea. You mentioned a couple of times since the beginning of your discussion, you mentioned about research, sports science, and how you use them in order to develop your program. So can you elaborate a little bit more on how you partner with research or university, and what type of data were you able to gather over the last couple of years in order to get to where you are right now? So were you able to get into a partnership with some university or sports scientists in order to get those data that you thought that could be helpful in confirming what you want to accomplish?
Yeah, we're still developing that area as well. We're not really at the point where we want to be, but for now we have two networks, or two competence networks. One network that focuses on sports psychology, coaching, leadership, led by a guy at Hansa University in Sweden called Andreas. His name is Andreas Ivarsson. He's also head of sports psychology at Arsenal Football Club in England. And he helped us to put out this group of people when we have Andreas Stenling, who's up in Umeå University. We have Stefan Wangström at Karlstad University. We have Siv Gjesdal, who is at the Norwegian School of Sports in Oslo. So we have a network with people from different universities and that can help us. But we also have practitioners within this group that work on a daily basis with hockey players when it comes to helping them perform better, actually. And then we have another group when it comes to physiology, when we have Tommy Lundberg at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, who are head of that one. And those two groups help us out with three things. They help us with research. We have this model where all that we would like to develop needs to be an outspoken need from the grassroots, or from out there, from the club level. So we have like big ears out to the clubs. What do they see that we need to develop? And then we put this idea into some kind of loop where we do priorities. And if we find it necessary, like we did with fun maps, we hook up with the best scientists in the world and try to get them to help us. And amazingly, no one ever says no. They want to be a part of Swedish ice hockey, which is fantastic. And then it's important to when we've done this research, we need to put it back out there to the clubs and the coaches in a meaningful way. So we talk a lot about how important it is with a meaningful language, with a purposeful language, that the whole research can't come out as an academic report. It needs to come out in some guiding principles, some kind of concrete advice for the individual how to use it. So we have this model that works quite well. It's the one risk that I see is that this kind of strategy, it stays on our development department. We have some struggling still when it comes to make sure that these are the whole federations. I mean, we have a department for competition who also needs to develop and need to develop with the research or evidence-based basis for their eyes. But they will have, give me a couple of more years, maybe.
So just to continue on those questions. So you've explained your principles and your implementation. So question for you, really simple. What's next? What's on your working desk right now? What are you trying to accomplish? What's actually happening as far as implementation? Is there any big thing that you think it's coming or you're working on? Like what's your burning project right now?
Yeah. Right now, as I said, we need to finish our work with a coaching education program, with our game formats, with a club development program. We have connected with the Swedish Sports Confederation, who have also their districts organization help us out to reach out to all our clubs. So they visit them, they help them with the development process. We provide them with material and the way that we will see our clubs to move, and they are like facilitators out there. So we need to keep them updated. And then we have, those three: coaching program, club development program, and game formats. We need to finish those. And then we need to look into some new ones, like how do we get the girls' ice hockey program to grow? It's going too slow. We need to look into the recreational part of hockey. How do we make it easier to play hockey, even if you doesn't want to go for an elite career? But I think the hardest part is all about patience, and to realize that when we are done, we are not at the goal line, we are at the start line. Because I mean, it's a long way from the Swedish Hockey Association's facilities in Stockholm down to the club and the coach in Malmö or Kiruna. That's a hard part, that we doesn't get caught in starting new projects all the time. We need to be patient. But that's for me at least. That's the hardest part. I mean, I have 1,000 ideas, but they need to make it in and implement it in the everyday practice.
And things, I mean, I'm sure you'll agree with me, things are evolving so fast with sports science that there's always something that comes out that's, okay, like this is interesting. We need to include that in our programs moving forward. So I agree with you. We need to be patient in order to accomplish your goals. In conclusion, before we conclude this session, for our baseball people watching tonight, what would be your biggest lesson that you've learned over the years with regards to athlete development? You mentioned being patient. Is there something else you could mention as a big lesson learned that they could go away with it and think about how they could do things differently in their sport?
I think what has been one key factor to that has helped us to where we are today is the strategy that we put up earlier to really work with the decision makers. I don't know how you are organized, but I mean, we have a annual meeting every other year where some of these decisions are made. So we need to make sure that those organizations that will vote on those meetings really are aware of what we're doing and what we're aiming for, and especially why we do this. Because if we can't explain why, it's going to be hard. So we need to work with the why question before you start working with how and what. Because once they understand that, it's obvious why we do some of these changes, and they will say yes to it. But if we just work with details when we talk to them, it's going to be harder. So that's the first one. Make sure you have a clear why to why you do what you do. And the second part, it takes time to change old structures. So the patient part is important. I mean, we can be in big part and small details that people react. So take your time to talk to people. I don't know how many hockey games I have seen during these years with our district's head of the board, just to be there and talk to him or her about development, and especially tell them what science says. What are the big cornerstones that we need to build this on? Because they rarely know. They are not professionals in that way. They're good professionals in their work, but most of them do this on their spare time.
So you mentioned understanding the why. I think it's a really, really good advice. If people at home watching, if you have never read the book Start With Why from Simon Sinek, or there's a great TED Talk about it that you can Google and find, I highly recommend it. And it's going to explain exactly what we're discussing right now, the importance of the why. Anders, I want to thank you. It's been an hour already. Like, time flew by crazy. It's been an hour already. So I want to thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge, to hopefully inspire people in Quebec with regards to with how they want to position their sport moving forward, and what could be their key guiding principles also for the development of baseball. And I think it's important, and you mentioned it, to go outside of our world. Sometimes when we're too much in our world with the same people, we don't see the real issues, and we don't get exposed to great ideas and great concepts as you just shared with us tonight. So I want to thank you on behalf of everybody here. I'm going to switch a second to French just to conclude this session here. Donc tout le monde, j'espère que vous avez apprécié cette séance-là ce soir avec Anders. Je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qu'on peut apprendre d'une organisation qui a quand même eu beaucoup de succès à travers le temps, mais qui a quand même pris le temps de faire une introspection, savoir comment on va, qu'est-ce qu'on pourrait faire de différent et comment on pourrait s'inspirer des autres également, tout en ayant en tête que un des principes fondamentaux du sport, c'est de développer la personne avant de développer justement les habiletés ou la tactique propre à notre sport, qui sont vraiment importants. Mais si on peut garder une vision qu'on développe la personne en premier, je pense qu'on peut quand même, puis la Suède est un exemple. Il y a beaucoup d'autres exemples aussi où on focus sur la personne, puis surprise, surprise, on a quand même des résultats au plus haut niveau possible. Alors, je vous remercie d'avoir participé à cette séance-là. J'espère qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qui vous restent en tête, que vous avez le goût peut-être d'apprendre davantage ou peut-être d'implanter dans vos programmes, que ce soit au niveau provincial, régional ou même local. So Anders, thanks again for everything. I'm sure we'll have other discussions at some point. I know we keep in contact, and I wish you the best. I wish you well, and hopefully that virus is behind us soon so we can meet again.
Thanks for having me. It was a quick hour, and I hope to see you soon again, Andre, in real life as well.
Thank you very much, Anders. Appreciate it.